Praise the Lord, everybody. This is the day that the Lord has made. We most certainly will rejoice and we will be glad in it. Listen, it is Wednesday night here at all around the world. It's Wednesday, particularly here on the West Coast. But it is our hour of power here at the Life of Faith Church. We know that Wednesday nights is for information and Sunday mornings is for inspiration. And I promise you, you're going to be overwhelmed with a lot of great things that you can go home with, that you can apply to your everyday lives. But this is what I need you to do. I need you to tag, I need you to share. I need you to get everybody that you possibly can to join us on this live stream tonight. I promise you, it is going to be an amazing time tonight. It's going to be an amazing time tonight. You do not want to miss this. And listen, what I want you all to do very quickly, if you can, I need you to take a moment and go get a notebook, a pen, a sheet of paper, get your laptop, or you probably viewing tonight on your laptop, so you may not be able to multitask like that simultaneously, but at least get a pen and a pad, because I promise you, tonight is an opportunity for you to grow. Hear me. A lot of times in church, we hear this, I'm not growing. I'm not. And 9 times out of 10, it's not that you're not growing. You're just not taking the necessary steps to grow. The information is going to be provided to you tonight. Hear me. The information is going to be provided to you tonight. And I'm telling you, you don't want to miss it. I have one of my sisters are on here that's going to join me in a little bit. And I'm telling you, I'm more than honored. I'm privileged because this woman of God is literally, she sought after. She's an itinerant speaker. She is a clinical psychologist. She is a real doctor. I'm talking about an earned doctorate degree, and she knows exactly what she's talking about. And while we are under this series this month, Under Pressure, we understood that last week I gave us some practical spiritual tools to help us deal with our pressure. And then on Sunday, we went to the book of Job. And I'm telling you, we had an awesome time. And listen, I don't think any of you all know, but Life of Faith Nation, we've opened up our registration. And listen to me, we have 4 spots available for our 9 a.m. service if you would like to join us in person. All you got to do is take out the time to go to www.lofnation.org. Go to www.lofnation.org and you can register for our class. I mean, not our class, for our Sunday morning service right now. You need to do that right now, because I promise you it is going to bless you. All right. And so tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring her on. But she is Dr. TK, Dr. Takisa Jackson. She is a licensed clinical psychologist. I know what to tell you in regards to what the word of the Lord is saying. I can tell you what the Bible say. But this woman of God, she's multi-gifted. She can tell you what the Bible say, and she can tell you what you got to do in a practical. And so there are certain things. Hear me. Some of us are sick because our pastor diagnosed us. Let me help. I said some of us are still sick because we were looking for our pastor or somebody that had some type of title, whether there was an evangelist, a pastor, minister, elder, and you've allowed them to tell you something, and it kind of messed you up. I know that's not my lane. Yes, I'm smart. I got a bachelor's and master's degree. But when it comes to this clinical psychology stuff and this mental awareness and mental health, you need to know how to extend to some resources. And so my friend, my sister is on here tonight, and she is amazing. And Dr. TK is somebody, listen, Life of Faith, it costs to have Dr. TK. That's all I'm saying. It costs. This woman of God, she deserves it costs. And so the fact that she came here tonight to be here with us, I'm extremely honored. Life of Faith helped me honor and thank God for Dr. TK.
Hi.
As she comes now. Hey,
Thanks for
Dr.
having
TK.
me.
I'm so
Hey,
happy to have you, sis. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I actually just came back from LA. I was working with a nonprofit out there with the reentry population, which are the people who come out of the prisons.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so we do. Well, we're gonna get a taste of it tonight, but
Okay.
we do. I
Okay.
do trauma-informed care, and I teach
Okay.
the men, one woman, but mostly men, about how they've normalized trauma, and that becomes
Wow.
problematic over time.
Normalized trauma. So, Dr. TK, I know exactly who you are,
Yeah.
but tell everybody in Life of Faith land. Can you let everybody know what is your actual practice?
Yeah.
What is it that you actually do, so they know who they viewing tonight?
All right. So I do a few things. I'm definitely a jack of all trades, but everything stems from my mental health background. So I am a mom, wife, mom of two. I attend Heavenly Vision Church online, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I have a private practice that is now strictly online, and I primarily see transitional age youth, like older teenagers, and I've also seen like families and couples. Some of the work that I currently do in the community, because I'm in a different phase in my business and purpose in terms of sharing what I know with a larger group of people versus just one-on-one, because I feel like at this day and age, in this era, there has to be a bigger impact made. And so I do a lot of
Wow.
the work in the nonprofit, working with individuals who come out of the prison system.
Mm,
And then I also am a college professor, even though I'm on break because of this era. I did a semester
yes.
off for self-care. And I'm also in another line of work in which I coach mental health therapists to open up their private practices, because my biggest mission during when this season happened is that instead of me focusing just on serving one-on-one clients, what if
Mhm.
I helped 100 therapists, 1,000 therapists serve 20 clients each? To me, that's a way bigger impact. And so
Wow.
that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years.
So the therapist come to the therapist. You understand me?
Yeah.
They come to Dr. TK. Listen, Life of Faith. Look, they on here saying, "Go ahead, Queen. Go ahead, Queen." Listen, that's my sister. Life of Faith. Y'all are in for a treat tonight, and Dr. TK is here, and she's going to help us. And I'm gonna literally like yield the floor to you, Dr. TK. We're in our under pressure series, so if you want to deal with some stress, how to handle
Mhm.
stress, how to handle PTSD, all depression, all of that type of stuff, we
Okay.
listening to you. We
Okay.
listening.
Nice. So I'll give you an agenda. He was definitely correct in terms of having a sheet of paper, maybe a few, and like one or two pens, because I definitely want you to take notes, because I'm all about application over information. Like I can give you the same information over and over again, but it really doesn't matter if you don't choose to do anything with the information that you receive. And so the three topics that I'm going to address is I'm actually going to do an assessment with you. It's a regular assessment. Now, just to give a disclaimer, you cannot walk away from this tonight saying she said that I had something, wrong with me. That is not what I'm here for. My biggest thing is to make sure that anybody who I get in front of, that you're more aware about what is truly happening internally so that you can do something about it, because it does impact you externally at work,
Jesus.
in relationships, and around other people. So I'm going to do an assessment. I'm also going to talk about grief and loss and just how it ties into this current season, but also just in general, how that impacts us. And that's directly correlated with trauma as well. And then, of course, I do positive psychology. So I can't have it all like be down, So,
Positive psychology. I like that. I
right.
like that.
So
I
at
like that.
the end, I'm going to talk about harvesting change talk, because we can
Mm,
highlight all these things that we lack. But I'm a believer that if we only focused on what we lack, then we won't manifest actually what we want. We won't focus on the desires.
wow.
And so, y'all ready?
Let's go.
All
Let's
right. So if
go.
you see me look to the side, I'm looking at my little list. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is actually, let's do grief and loss, because that one is more shorter and it will lead into trauma.
Okay.
So I like giving narratives and stories just because people seem to attach to those a lot better, and they remember them. So, of course, last March, we know what happened. And
Yeah.
then Around summer, that's when I started to get phone calls from a lot of the parents of kids I used to see that I knew were in high school. And I reached out to some of them as well. And one of the commonalities that came up was that when I was listening to the kids explain what their life was like during that time and during this time, they were feeling isolated, they were feeling irritable, everything that to me would capture someone who has depression. But they couldn't put a word to it. And they said, it's not depression though. So one particular 16-year-old, as she was talking, I said, can I just like interrupt you? And she said, yes. And I said, I want to share something with you. And I want you to tell me if this sounds familiar. I said, have you ever heard of the grief and loss process? And she was like, mm-mm. And I said, I'm going to explain it. And what I want you to do, we were doing this like improv because it was not on my agenda, is I said, I want you to think about what you've been through over the last couple of months. And this is for anyone who's listening. You can do the same thing right now. I want you to think about what your life has been like even in the last 13 months, right? Wow. Since last March. And I want you to see if you can visually remember what was happening in these stages that I'm going to explain. Okay. So the grief and loss process, it is a cycle, but most people bounce around the cycle depending on like how they, what type of grief and loss they're experiencing. Grief and loss also does not mean someone is deceased. And so most people think about grief and loss like someone has died. And during this season, a lot of people lost themselves. A lot of people had grief and loss because you lost physical proximity to your friends, your loved ones, your grandparents. You weren't able to do any of that. And so the first stage is typically denial/shock. And so I'll walk you through it like I did the young lady. I said, do you remember the day that someone told you you couldn't go back to school? So for those of you who are listening, do you remember the day that the school notified you via a big old text blast or email saying your kids cannot come back, this is the last day, or your boss told you you cannot come back into work or come get your box, you got to work from home and you have to homeschool your kids? Think about what that was like for you, because I'm sure that's giving me chills right now. Jesus. When I'm talking about it. That's how I know it's traumatic. Okay. So then the following stages are the ones where people bounce. So one of the stages is anger. Maybe you're angry about what has happened, what you have lost, or whom you have lost. Then we have sadness. Of course, we should know what sadness is, feeling blue. Some people say depressed. As a psychologist, I actually don't allow my clients to use labels in the session. They can do it in the beginning because they don't know me yet. But after about 2 to 3 sessions, I instead ask them, can they describe their depression? So I'll say this tip if you are a parent or a caregiver, because kids, even some adults, we don't know how to articulate our emotions based off of what we were or were not taught. And so specifically with children, you want to, if they say that they're depressed or angry or give a big word or like a label, ask them to describe what that means and how that feels. Because if you really think about it, someone can actually be depressed and they can express themselves outwardly, which looks like an anger outburst, snappy, moody, right? Or it can be inward, isolate. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to eat. All I want to do is sleep. And somebody in depression can actually flip-flop back and forth and you'll get it mixed up. Wow. And so it's really important not to use labels, but more so just to describe what's happening. Does that make sense? Yes. So you have denial/shock, you have anger, you have sadness, and then we also have bargaining. Bargaining, I've typically seen it with either survivor's guilt, which I'll talk about when we talk about PTSD, but survivor's guilt is, I'll say for people who grew up in certain neighborhoods in which they're exposed to community violence, survivor's guilt would be someone was supposed to go to the store, y'all switched spots and something happened to someone in which you were supposed to go and they went. So bargaining would be, you are bargaining with your higher power and you are bargaining saying, why not me? Why them? And then of course, we typically see this most at funerals, depending on the person who's passed away. So we have all those stages. And then of course, the last stage is acceptance. So the reason why I thought it would be so important to talk about grief and loss just with the stages alone is for people to identify if they've had a loss externally, like a person is now deceased, and or if they felt like they lost a piece of themselves, even in the last 13 months, then you want to identify what stage are you currently in? And can you actually say that you went through majority of the stages, because some people won't go through bargaining. That's one that some people will skip over. Okay. Also, grief and loss doesn't have a timeline, so stop rushing people to get over stuff. Okay. Everybody's experience is different. And I've seen clients where they hold on to grief and loss for 10 years. Why? Because they have to go to work and be functional to take care of their family. So know that grief and loss has no timeline. Note that someone can bounce around from anger to sadness as long as they need to. But the goal would be that if you see someone going through grief and loss, I would say first try to see if you can identify if it's an external loss, like deceased, or an internal loss. Because I think the internal loss it might last longer because the person has to work through their baggage. That takes work, and some people don't want to do that. So that's the overall grief and loss process. And as I began, I just asked the young girl, could she identify which stage she was in? And she literally was able to visualize in 5 minutes at every stage, because I think the stage she was at that point was sadness, going back and forth with anger because she couldn't go back to school. It's her senior year. That sucks, And so she was going back and forth because she can't blame anybody. What do you do?
Yeah.
So all you can do is hold it in, and holding it in turns into potentially depression. So I'll just give a quick rundown of what depression can look like. So depression can look like any of the following. And some people only look at one symptom. Please do not start therapizing yourself. I call it therapizing. Like, don't just start labeling yourself, because it's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you start giving yourself the label, what's going to automatically happen? And we did this like 2 Novembers ago at the workshop. This is part of my workshop, is that I highlighted the way that you think leads to the way that you feel, that leads to the way that you respond or that you react. So if you're constantly saying that,
hold on, Dr. TK, say that again. Say that again.
So I'm gonna say the words first, and then I'll repeat it. So thought, emotion, response.
Okay.
Thought, emotion, response. So I'll give the example that I know you liked because I did it on Facebook one day. So a lot of people don't like to drive on the 405 because it's like busy all the time. So let's just say we're going 405 north by like La Cienega, where it typically stops. Okay. So we're going on the 405, and let's just say I'm all the way to the carpool, like the left lane. And there's 2 other lanes on the right side of me, clearly. So I decide at the last minute, I need to hop off on La Sierra. I just decide. So I cut off everybody's car. I almost hit your car. You kind of swivel a little bit. The question I usually ask is, what is your initial thought? So let me ask you, since you're on here with me, what would be your initial thought if you, your wife, and kids were in the car and I almost hit your car and I cut you off? What would be your initial thought?
What in the world are you doing?
What would be your emotion based off that thought?
I'll be angry.
What would be your response?
My response, I'll probably blow the horn or yell.
Yeah, reaction, right?
Down. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, some people said they would chase me. I'm like, oh, you gonna chase me off the freeway?
Yeah. My sister did that yesterday. I had to calm her down.
Yeah, reaction. Listen, life is real, okay?
Yeah.
So let me rewind. I'm gonna show you quickly, and I'm gonna show everybody who's watching quickly what therapy is. And the question would be, why do we make it so long? And so I'm going to rewind it. I am in the last lane. I decide to cut you off, but we ain't going that fast. We're going 40 miles per hour. We on 405.
Right.
So you see me as you're getting boiled up inside and you about to roll down your window. You see that my car, we're going to put a hospital there. You see my car going to the hospital emergency. What is your thought about what just happened?
Well, it gives a different perspective for sure. That it's an emergency, obviously. She probably pregnant.
Yep.
They need to get to the hospital. I can understand that for sure.
Now, what's your emotion now?
I feel horrible because I reacted I reacted too fast without kind of like looking at the whole entire picture.
So the truth of the matter is no one really knows the true picture. But what I just described, and it's very interesting, I usually do this super fast with clients who say, I've been in therapy forever, nobody can help me, the whole tangent. And I'm like, want to bet? Like, I'm a real competitive and fun therapist. I'm like, I bet you in 1 minute, I'll show you, how I can work. So we do this activity like just as fast as we did it in 1 to 2 minutes. And then what I'll say is, what's crazy is you said you can't change, but you did just change. You just changed your thought, that changed your emotion, that changed your reaction, because you ain't gonna chase me off the freeway no more. You're not gonna blow the horn. You're not gonna, flip the bird, do whatever. You're not gonna do anything now.
Flip me off, none of that. Cuss me out.
Yeah, your thoughts have changed.
Yeah.
So what I'm really explaining is that if people get a hold of the way that you are thinking, you will automatically change the way you feel about life, about people, about the world, and what you're going through. And you also will not sit in that negative state, because I will say this, it is actually okay for you to still get angry, even if I was pregnant going into the hospital. But the difference is between scenario 1 and scenario 2 is that your anger is not going to last as long. And that's the goal. Our goal is not to say that you can never get angry again. That's not human.
Wow.
So that's therapy in 2 minutes.
Wow.
So
just don't be angry for a long time.
Yeah,
Wow.
So now let's pivot and stop me too if anybody has questions. So now let's talk about when the anger stays around. Let's talk about trauma. So I hope that we've given people time to get a pen and a sheet of paper. Okay.
Yeah, we going.
So this topic is very, very near and dear to my heart, just because I grew up in Compton. I didn't do the whole background. So I grew up in Compton. I moved up to the Bay Area. And at that time, back in 2005, when I was in graduate school, just to give you an understanding, Compton was number 11 on the worst cities in the United States. There's a list that circulates every year. Yeah. I went to a worse city, because Oakland was number 1 and Richmond was number 4. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me in terms of the crime rate. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that when we're exposed to things based off how you grew up and what you saw or what you think you saw, it starts to create a narrative of how you do and see life, like your whole adulthood, also how you parent. And so what I'm going to do is I'm first going to explain the different types of PTSD, and then I'm going to do the questionnaire.
What is PTSD?
Yeah. So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
And most of us only look at it from veterans, people who come home from the war. Why they ducking under the bed, But PTSD was me walking outside, seeing stuff on my mom's porch. That was PTSD. I don't know who's watching who grew up in the 80s, but this is a for real example. So if you grew up in the 80s, some people know exactly what I'm talking about. We played a game called Drive-By. Mm-hmm. Now, what kid should be playing Drive-By? No child. But the things that children were doing when they were outside, because we didn't have video games, is that we were priming ourselves to get traumatized because of what we saw. So literally we would say every red car that comes by, if we're bored, somebody's going to yell Drive-By and we're all going to duck. Right. And of course, my mom didn't know I was playing that game, but I'm traumatizing myself, not even recognizing it over and over again because of what I saw in my neighborhood. So to move forward, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, if I break it down per word, post means after. Traumatic, something that I want all the listeners or watchers to think about is how would you define trauma? So like, how would you define trauma in your own words?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Sorry, Pastor. I'm like, come on, get engaging.
You know what? It's like that never-ending thought. It's like you're constantly afraid of a certain thing based off of what took place previously. Mm-hmm. Like for me, as much as I've been in church, I used to hate being in churches by myself. Because I'm at my old church, I swear I went to the back of the church and I saw something I was supposed to see. And I was like traumatized as a kid. It's like, I hated being in churches all by myself. Like, it was just like, like one of those, like, you running before you turn the light off because you don't want to be in the dark. Yeah. But it's like now I can be in church all by myself, but I was traumatized by that for a very long time. Something that previously happened when I was a kid. Yeah.
So let's take that. So someone who's experienced trauma, when we put it all together, it's you have symptoms post the traumatic experience. So with symptoms, which is what we're going to go over, is that your body and your mind starts to do something that sometimes you don't want it to do. A lot of people have heard of the fight or flight response. So fight or flight response is that you're in a dangerous situation, or at least it looks dangerous, and your body will react regardless of what you tell your body to do. No matter how much training you've done, like my little game as a kid, when I was put into that situation in real life as an adult at like a party in my teenagehood, I froze. I didn't duck. So it went into a fight or flight response. Sometimes you can't control it. And I'm going to do my hands because research does show that the way that your brain is wired is the way that your brain fires. So when you're exposed to trauma, research shows your brain starts to rewire itself to see the world in a particular way, develop healthy or unhealthy coping skills, like how to deal with stress in a particular way. And imagine if somebody is exposed to trauma, maybe different types of trauma throughout their whole lifetime, right?
Wow.
So with PTSD, there's two sides. There's first the two different types. So there's just, I'm gonna say single case PTSD. That's when someone has been exposed to one thing and that's it, you know? But then you have, I'm gonna say like myself, I would be considered to have complex PTSD. I think that if we watch the news right now, all of us potentially can have complex PTSD. Complex PTSD is that you're exposed to different things or the same type of thing over and over and over again. So what I really want people to hear is, are you contributing to your own mental health problems? Because you don't have to watch the same video 5,000 times. I'm sure you saw the first one. Why are you repeating the same image in your head to get more mad? It's not helping you. It's actually doing more damage. Can you just go on YouTube on CNN and watch a summary for 5 minutes? You know, like you don't have to watch the whole 5-hour show multiple times. So that's the two types, is single trauma and then complex trauma. The reason I want people to know the difference is that will determine potentially how long someone is in mental health, because we may cover one traumatic event at a time. Okay.
Wow.
So those are two levels. Then we have different types of PTSD. So I'll describe those because one of them I think is minimized way too much because people don't know that it exists. So the first criteria for someone to have PTSD is that either one, they have been exposed to trauma against them, like something happened to you, right? The second type of trauma, which I think is what you described, is that you witness trauma happening to someone else. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first one is against you. The second one is you witness it with someone else. And that can also include like domestic violence with children, seeing parents like, oh, they didn't see nothing. They see and they hear way more than you think, you know? The third type, which is the more minimized type, is vicarious trauma. VICARIOUS, vicarious trauma. And vicarious trauma is as simple as picking up your phone and watching somebody post a story about 5,000 times about what just happened. And then you turn on CNN. And then you call your friend and they telling you what happened with them last night. You're listening to other people's stories, but what do you do with it? It doesn't dissipate in thin air. So like, I know last time we had met for the Fatal Attraction, we had talked on the phone a little bit about the work that I was doing at the church, because part of the training that I did with anyone who serves in ministry or has contact with, I'm gonna say, the congregation in which people divulge things to you, maybe, you know, in confidentiality or, you know, behind closed doors, to help them through something. What do you do with that information? It doesn't go anywhere. You can pray about it. You can pray for that person, but psychologically, it's still in your head. So imagine if you don't do anything about that for years and years, and you're going through your own trauma. How many bags do you have at this point? You don't think that's going to burn you out? Like that will burn people out.
Burning me out right now talking about.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. So, all right. Yeah. So now I'm going to do the list. So let me just recap. I went over simple trauma. There's no trauma that's simple, but like one trauma, complex trauma. And then you have trauma that happens against you, trauma you witness with someone else, and then vicarious trauma, which is the most minimized because you're talking to people, not realizing you're taking on their trauma. Okay.
Right.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the letter and what it means, because I'm breaking up the symptoms. And if we're familiar with dominoes, all I want you to do, you don't have to write the words down. I just want you to more so tally. Like you're going to tally if the answer to the question is yes. So I'm going to list symptoms. And if you say, yes, I've experienced that at least in the last year, then the tally is yes. Now, disclaimer, there's no magic number with the one I'm doing because this is not a mental health intake. Okay, that's a little different. But I just want you to see how wide burst PTSD is and how it's around you all day long. Okay. So I'll walk you through it. And some of them I'm going to close it out with like explaining something. So the first letter is B for behavior. So we're going to look at your behavior as it relates to exposure to trauma. Okay. So have you experienced sleep disturbances? And if the answer is yes, put it like a tally. So sleep disturbances are you have a hard time falling asleep or you have a hard time staying asleep. Okay. The next one is, have you experienced nightmares of any kind? Okay. The next one is, have you experienced appetite changes? That can be up or down. And I will start interweaving stuff to make things make sense for some people, because some people will miscategorize themselves and say I'm depressed, when in actuality in season 2020, you have PTSD because these symptoms overlap. All right. So appetite changes. The next one is hypervigilance. So the easiest way I can say that is that you look overly paranoid. Okay. You're always looking over your shoulder. The next one is startled response. So that means that you're jumpy. You know that the 4th of July is coming. You know they're going to be doing these M80s or loud fireworks and you still jump. Okay. The next one is
you still jump.
Yeah. The next one is losing things. Now we're talking about your brain. Remember, your brain rewires. So
I'm depressed for sure.
Losing things. Yeah.
Because I'm always losing something.
Right.
Help me, Holy Ghost.
Right, listen. The next one is clumsiness, because now we're talking about a certain part in your brain. Can you not keep your walk? We call it a gait, G-A-I-T, your gait. Can you walk straight? Okay, like they do that in DUI checks. They make people walk a line because it's a part of their brain that has been turned off due to the alcohol. Okay. The next one is any negative coping that will be deemed as like self-harm behaviors. So self-harm behaviors, I'm going to say these just because of the times we're in, because people are not talking about it and it's happening more so to our kids. And so self-harm behaviors would be, unfortunately, people harming their body, cutting. Self-harm behaviors would also be smoking or drinking to a point where you're trying to numb how you feel. So you're not doing it socially, you're doing it to numb yourself. That's negative coping skills, you know? So those are all behavioral symptoms. So just tally them up and then I'm gonna ask you something at the end, okay? So the next category, which is not that long, is physical symptoms, like your body. So it's 3 categories. The first category is, have you experienced any panic symptoms? So panic symptoms, and all this is one, can be sweating, heart palpitations or rapid heartbeat, difficulty breathing, feeling faint, dizzy. Any of those would be deemed as a panic symptom. So that's one. The next one is you have aches or pains in your body, but you ain't worked out. Like you just don't know why your body is aching and hurting. And most of the time we carry stress in parts of our body and we don't realize it. And then the last one is weakened immune system. So you can't for the life of you figure out, why is it that you are always getting sick? Why is it that you always have a cold? Not allergies, but you're always getting sick and you can't shake it.
Not
right?
Allergies. Teaching tonight, Dr. TK, you teaching, girl. You teaching.
If you really think about it, think about like what we talked about so far with trauma. If you've been exposed, like your brain is being rewired all day long, right? especially if you look at social media, my gosh. And so you're actually weakening what's inside your body because you're showing it all negative stuff. How many times throughout the day do you pull up something positive? So that's something you want to be aware of. The next category is longer. It's called like your thoughts, like the way that we think, also known as cognitions. So these are symptoms for the way that we think. So the first one is actually quite dangerous because if you don't realize what's happening, you will walk around having trauma. It's called, do you minimize vicarious trauma? So are you minimizing right now the impact that watching the news, watching these videos are having on you, your mood, your sleep, your appetite, your interaction with other people? Think about it. You may see a video. I always tell therapists this. Be very mindful of what videos you choose to watch before you go into a therapy session. What if the person on the other side of the couch is like the quote unquote perpetrator that's on the news? Are you going to really be able to be objective as a therapist? No, you're not. So we teach them how to minimize exposing themselves to that trauma, especially when they're serving other people. When I was saying the church, it's the same thing. Okay. So do you minimize your exposure to trauma? That's one. The other one is, do you feel like you have low self-esteem or you doubt yourself? That's all one. So low self-esteem or self-doubt. The next one, which a lot of people may be like, ooh, in 2020, yes, trouble concentrating. Because we're in front of the computer now all the time. So trouble concentrating. The next one is confusion or disorientation. You feel like you're tapped out. You're not here. You're somewhere else. You're here, but you're not here. Okay. So confusion or disorientation. The next one is perfectionism. Now, some people may be wondering, why is that on here? That sounds positive. I'll just give you an example. A child that has been exposed to childhood trauma, she became a perfectionist in high school to the point where it impacted her academic performance because she felt, because she didn't have control over what someone did to her as a child and she wasn't heard, she chose to take her power back by taking control of how she does work in school. The problem is she took forever to write papers because all the letters had to be drawn a particular way. So she got behind on her work. That is a problem. Okay, so perfectionism. Another one is racing thoughts. You can't turn them off. Another one is loss of interest in previously enjoyable activities.
Jesus.
Okay. Another, and that actually is that's another overlap with depression. Another one is you may have repetitive images of trauma. So to a degree, that one can actually be quickly changed if you stop clicking buttons on your phone. Okay. So repetitive images of the trauma. Another one is maybe somebody's lacking a meaning of life. You're lacking purpose. Why am I here? And then the last one in this category in terms of how we think is, do you have thoughts of hurting yourself or other people? Okay. So I know this is not the topic. I'm not going to go too deep, but it is in our media with our kids. So I will say it because I know that people in your congregation have children. You have children. So suicidal thoughts are actually more normal than we think. They come up in about 90% of the population. The difference between someone who has suicidal thoughts versus someone who has a plan to end their life are totally different. One person lacks a plan, but what they're probably really saying to you is that they're hopeless. Look at the season we are in or coming out of. A lot of people were hopeless, or look at our kids, they felt like nothing was going to get better. So unfortunately, some of them, took their lives. Okay. So I don't want people to confuse the two because I work with parents and they freak out when a kid starts talking about being hopeless, and it doesn't mean they don't want to be here. Okay. So just be mindful of how you respond. The next category is your emotions. So do you feel helpless or powerless? That's one. Do you experience survivor's guilt? That's what we talked about in grief for loss. Do you experience numbness? You feel like you can't feel anything or little to nothing at this point. Do you have emotional unpredictability? Like, I don't know what side of the bed you're going to wake up on today. Another symptom is fear. Do you have fear of some place, something, someone, a group of people? Do you have any type of fear? Because that feeds into trauma. And then, of course, do you experience any sadness? Okay. And then the very last category is social, which I think impacted the most. And so, have you experienced, at least in the last year, withdrawal or isolation? That's all one. The next one is, have you felt lonely? The next one is, do you feel irritable or intolerant to now be around other people? So people can be lonely, but when they get around people, because this is going to happen, let's sneak this in too. For all your children that are going back to school, please, as parents or caregivers, or if you're involved in any kids' lives, please make sure that you're having conversations with these kids before they go to school, when they come home, not to provoke anxiety, but just to ask them how their day was. Because I don't know about you, but I could not fathom being out of school for almost a year and a half as a kid. So if you imagine, it's a culture shock when you go back, or if some people have been back to work. It doesn't feel the same. The kids have said it feels weird. So talk to them, okay? The next one is distrust. You don't trust people. The next one is projection of blame. You can't take accountability. You blame everything and everyone for you not fixing stuff in your life. The next one is decrease of interest in intimacy. And we all know that intimacy can be emotional and physical. And it doesn't mean you don't want to be intimate with your partner or spouse. However, your body is shut down. Okay. And then the last one, for our parents, because of what you've been exposed to, it may actually change your parenting style. So some parents become overly protective because of what happened to them and they didn't clear out their baggage or what they've been exposed to, which again is not the best idea for your child. So do you have any questions about that?
That's heavy right there.
Okay.
That's heavy right there.
It's a lot of symptoms. I'm not saying that PTSD actually has like more than 12 symptoms. So the reason why I say don't attach a label unless you've seen a professional is that some people will have one symptom, like, oops, she moody, she got bipolar. And I'm like, no, like she could just be having a bad day, you know? Yeah. And so, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's no secret number because this is not a therapy intake. I just more so want people to be aware when they're writing those tallies that, to me, if you have one or more tallies, there needs to be a shift. If you got a whole domino spread, you may want to go talk to somebody because you're carrying that around everywhere you go. And if you wonder why certain things maybe are not manifesting in your life the way that you want, are you doing the internal work to go to the next level? And I would say probably not, because sometimes we choose to repress it. We push it down because it's too difficult to deal with. But at some point, it will come out. The harmful part is that it may come out at the wrong time, wrong location, like at your job, Jesus. Or unfortunately, in front of the wrong person. Like some people can probably attest to this if you're like in a relationship. Let's just say if you were at work or you were talking to friends and somebody irritated you, but you get off the phone or you leave work and come home, and then your kid is just sitting on the couch playing a video game and they ain't took out the trash, right? You go off on the kid, but you're not all the way mad at the kid. Yeah. You're actually mad at your boss because they made you mad. But you go 1000% on that 15-year-old boy sitting on the couch. Jesus. And then, hopefully they don't talk back. But I mean, let them look at you side eye. Then the conversation is about they disrespected you. Really? You started this. Okay.
The foundation is your boss.
Right.
Wow.
Does anyone have any questions before I do the last part, the wrap up?
My God. Dr. TK, you walking through here.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, you walking through here. Wow. This is good. Mm-hmm. Life of Faith, make sure if you guys have questions or any of our guests, anybody that's on tonight, please take advantage of this because, like I said, we're bringing it to you for you to sit and talk to Dr. TK personally. Trust me, there is a good hefty fee. And the fact that you have her here tonight to your disposal, please, 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 please ask as many questions. Because listen, when we bring Gress on here, I always tell you, you know, slide in her DMs, ask some questions. But this is what she get paid to do. So you can't leave this format and ask her questions in her DMs. You know, this is.
Oh, yeah, because the DM is not HIPAA compliant, my people.
Yeah, it's not HIPAA compliant.
So I can't answer no questions. No. I will actually reroute you to my email and then reroute you to someone to go talk to.
Yeah. Period. All right. So go ahead, Dr. TK. You can wrap it up or whatever.
So I'm gonna wrap it up and bring y'all back up because some of y'all probably like, oh my God, I got. All right, so I'm gonna round it up with talking about what's called harvesting change talk. Okay, so if you still have your pen, you can actually Google this. There's something called stages of change. Stages of change. And the theory is called motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing. And the purpose, I'll just describe it. Because if you Google stages of change, motivational interviewing, and you click on images, you'll see the slide that I'm about to explain, okay, like pictures. So stages of change are really important. Now that we've went through at least grief and loss and trauma, I'm sure for someone listening, they've been able to identify at least one thing that they were like, you know what, I probably need to go check this out. I need to work on this somehow, right? With someone, right? So I'll explain the stages of change. The first stage of change, because the goal is, let's just say if you were my client, the goal would be that you buy into us working on your change. It's actually not helpful if I'm doing all the work and you just showing up and you don't want to apply the information. Therapy will not, you'll be a therapy forever. So the first stage.
Before you wrap it up, we got one question right here.
Oh, go ahead.
Daniel said, how much does a person in an environment play a factor in these problems?
Mm-hmm. You mean like another person outside of you? You said, how does a person, like another person? Because okay, so we look at the whole environment. So when I say whole environment, I'm gonna name off some categories that create the person that you see today in the mirror. Because at the end of the day, that's my goal, is to find out how you became the person that you are today. And then if we need to unlearn some behaviors or habits, then we need to do work, right? So the categories that we look at, for those of you who are wondering, like what kind of questions even how we address this in therapy, is we ask you questions about your family history, such as your relationships with, for me, up to 2 generations, because the apple don't fall too far from the tree. So if you're wondering why your parents or grandparents act a certain way, I always even tell adults, if these people are living, go observe the interaction between them and their parent. That's why they're acting the way that they're acting. Or some people fill in the gaps because of what they don't know, right? Wow. But the theory of a person in the environment, the person is, I'm gonna say the flower, right? Like we planting the seed. But the question is the soil ready for the seed to be planted? Wow. A lot of times, unless you plant the child, which a lot of people don't know, like we just have the child and we figure it out as we go. Wow. And in terms of what we expose our children to, it becomes dangerous territory when our parents or people in our environment don't even realize that they've also been traumatized. Why? Because what they've been exposed to is all that they know. Therefore, it's normal to them. So guess what they do? They teach you the same thing. That's where I start talking about like poverty mindset. Even like within spirituality, like people have a poverty mindset. You believe that everything is about being broke. I don't believe that living check to check is you being blessed. Like there's nowhere in the Bible that I know that says that like being broke is okay. Like I don't recall reading any of that. I recall that you're supposed to live in prosperity and abundance.
Yeah.
So why are people settling? And guess what? After you turn 18, unfortunately, at least for my clients, even though they may still be living with their parents or in that environment, at 18, you actually have the choice to decide if you want to continue those behaviors that your environment or people in your environment has influenced on you or in front of you. You have a choice. It will take work because that's all you know.
Wow.
And most people that I've worked with in the inner city, like my young men, they will often tell me they feel like they're living a double life because I worked in the jail. So they were like in gangs, but they were also working with me to get right. And they felt like they were being 2 different people. And I'm like, but this is your harvesting process. You have to break something down, in order to get to the other side. But it's up to them to decide if they want to become the best version of themselves. But everybody in your environment dictates who you will become. Okay. So for those of you who are wondering about environment, write this quote down. You are the average of the 5 to 7 people that you hang around. That's by Jim Rohn, and like it's in personal development. If you want to make a certain amount of money, let's just say you want to make $100,000. Are you spending all your time hanging around people that only make $25,000? That doesn't add up, right? You have to be around people that have the mindset that you want to adopt, including lifestyle, spirituality, every component of your life. You have to surround yourself around the right circle. So in terms of stages of change, I'll just describe that quickly is once someone deems that they want to work on a piece of themselves, one at a time, then I will want you to identify what stage of change you're in. Are you in pre-contemplation, which is you're in denial that there's a problem? Okay. The second stage is called contemplation. Another word for it is ambivalence. You're straddling the fence. Every other day you change in your mind. Okay. The third stage is actually where change starts to happen. It's called determination or preparation, depending on what picture you find on Google. Determination or preparation. That's when you've acknowledged you have a problem. You're ready to fix it. You're just waiting for the teacher to show up. Okay. And then the next one, of course, is action, like you're doing the work. Then you go into maintenance, like kind of like weight loss. You're maintaining the weight loss or weight gain. Now, the last stage, I want everybody to write this down. It's called relapse. Relapse is inevitable. I'm gonna repeat that again. Relapse is inevitable, AKA it is bound to happen at least once. The trick is, what is your mindset like when you fall back to your old behavior? Do you go back to denial? No. Do you go back to ambivalence? Maybe. But I hope that you just say, I didn't have the right tools for that situation. So can you help me with this particular situation? It's a learning process. And if somebody can do that, they will be way better off than someone living in denial. So it's called Stages of Change Motivational Interviewing. You can Google it, click on images, and you will actually get the graph. Okay. And then I just want to do a mindset activity, then I'm done.
Do your thing, Dr. TK.
All right. Now, if somebody driving, clearly do not close your eyes. Okay. So what I want to do is I like to focus on you becoming the best version of yourself. Okay. So I want everybody to get a picture of a goal that you want to work on in 2021, like any goal in any part of your life, just one. Okay. So everybody should write that goal down. Okay. So what I want you to do, if you have the ability to do it, close your eyes, and I just want you to listen to me walk you through a visual activity. And I'm going to give you some prompts. So I want you to imagine that goal. And right now I want you to imagine that today is December 31st, 2021. You take a look at your vision board or your goals list, and you take a look at everything you were supposed to accomplish this year. And you cannot believe your eyes. You literally manifested at least 75% of the things on your vision board. You actually realize that you manifested more than you originally asked for in particular areas in that goal that you made. You realize that when reflecting on this past year, one thing was very different than the previous year: your focus. You were able to stay focused on accomplishing that goal. Despite what occurred around you in your house, in your environment, in your world, on social media, you continue to remain optimistic. You surrounded yourself around the right people. You invested in gaining knowledge and information to actually hit your goal. You became relentless about your results. There is a no excuse approach, and you refuse to give up. So now I want you to scan your mind, and I want you to scan your body. And I want you to see if you are able to visualize yourself as manifesting that goal as already done. What emotion do you feel right now? Where do you feel that emotion in your body? Is your stomach tingling because you super juiced up? Are you smiling because I can't see you? Do you probably want to get up and jump and run around the house depending on the goal? The goal would be because you know you were able to manifest it and it is already done. You should feel on top of the world. So I want you to say this with me as you have your eyes closed. I want you to visualize that goal in written words, but as your eyes are closed. Visualize it. Get a picture of it. And I want you to say where you are that it is already done. And when you are ready, you can open up your eyes.
Ooh.
So how do you feel?
I feel like I'm on top of the world, Dr. TK.
Mm-hmm.
Golly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So I'm going to give a book reference for those book readers, or if you want to read something positive. Okay. It's a book, and some people may have read it. It's called It Is Done by Richard Dotts, Dotts. If you go on Amazon, he had about 5,000 books. They all about 100 pages. So you don't have to read a Stephen King novel, but all of his books are about manifestation. And the It Is Done, I'm going to say for spiritual purposes, one of the things that I like that I'll close out with is that at the very last chapter, he talks about the word amen. And I was talking to Bishop about this like during the season, because I said it's interesting that, a lot of people say amen, and do they even know what it means? Are they thinking about what it means when they say it?
Yeah.
And it is done is you're giving up the how. So you declare your goal, but what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to transfer our how into the lap of him. And then we're supposed to go and just do what we can do, but we're not supposed to sit here and try to figure out every single step, because that's why people don't take action. So if you say amen from this point on, or if you read that book, he's going to say it. He's going to say, don't use the word unless you mean it. So don't do a big old prayer and say amen, and then you go right back to your same behavior 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Amen to that. Dr. TK, Andrea has a question. She said, what is the best way to deal with anxiety?
Mm-hmm. So
that's a hot one.
Yeah. So anxiety. So I would say the good thing is what we talked about tonight, it actually has the same type of coping strategies. Any type of depression or anxiety, they overlap with symptomology, which means they also overlap with the strategies. So I'll give you a quick strategy. And if you have a pen, write these down. Okay. So the first thing you want to do when you feel any negative emotion, including anxiety, like you're not comfortable, I first want you to think about what is the internal trigger and external trigger that's making you anxious. Because remember, thought, emotion, response. That's how you control anxiety, is focusing on, figuring out your thought patterns. Okay. So let's just say if you're feeling nervous, I want you to scan your surroundings. If you feel it right now, ask yourself, what in my surroundings is making me uncomfortable? What do I hear? Tap into your 5 senses. Because sometimes we want to look at visual, but you may be listening to something. You may be listening to a song that triggers some anxiety. Some of you watch a video that's a replay of what happened in March. That's an automatic trigger. That's fight or flight response, by the way. So internal and external trigger. Internal trigger is, what are you telling yourself to honestly feed into the anxiety?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes we don't recognize that. I'm not saying everybody, but some people want to externalize why we feel a certain way. And I want everybody that's listening to take at least 50% accountability of your own health. There's a choice. External, you can't tell other people what to do. But what I said during COVID is I said, whatever happens in the world is whatever happens. But I have control of what happens in my house. I have control of my mood in my house. And I made sure to declare that. So the first one is triggers, internal and external. The next one is, once you've done that, when you're anxious or anything else, then you want to ask yourself, how does your body feel? Because what I'm really moving into a first level coping strategy is, I want you to recognize that when you didn't catch the thought, you at least catch your body reacting before someone goes into a panic attack. Because if you start to recognize certain triggers in your body, you can actually catch it before it gets worse. It doesn't have to last as long if you catch it, but you have to, over time, learn how to pay attention. So some people may say, I know because my stomach is moving. So stomach is a one for anxiety that people get mixed up. Let me ask you, do you know the difference of how your stomach may hurt if you have to speak in front of 1,000 people that you don't know versus if you have to go to the bathroom versus if you're nervous? Can you tell the difference in your stomach? Most people can.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, I got stage fright versus something is happening that's wrong. If you learn how to pay attention to your body, that is a powerful coping strategy because you're now controlling your body and controlling your mind. Okay. So that's the second stage, body. The third one is going straight for the coping strategy. So I'm going to give you three. The first one is, and these are more baseline because I would need more information on the person. The first one is learning how to breathe properly. A lot of times, the reason why people hyperventilate and go into a panic attack is because you are hyperventilating. Your brain is not getting any energy. So if you've ever done yoga, what do they tell you to do? Breathe in your nose, out through your mouth. Slow, at least 3 times. You should be everybody should be doing this every morning they wake up, period. As soon as you get out of bed, before you touch that phone, give yourself 3 deep breaths, okay? The next strategy is counting. Now, people do this all the way wrong. People say, I count to 10, it don't work. I don't expect it to work. How long have you been counting to 10? Since I've been 3. How old are you? 30. Okay. There's no mental effort. You don't even have to think about counting to 10. You just count. So what did you really slow down if you didn't have to think about counting to 10? So what if I said, count from 67 backwards by 3s or by 7s? Yeah, like nobody gonna want to do that. Right? But what happens is instead of you now focused on what was making you anxious, because it's all about the shift. Now you're shifting your brain and maybe being frustrated about the next number, but your body has calmed down because it's focused on a different stimuli. It's focused on something different, if that makes sense. So if you need to count, go somewhere and choose a high number, not a even number, because you know even numbers, and count back by 3s or 7s, and you'll see that your brain will shift. Okay. The third one is what we actually just did, is that you tap into your 5 senses and you picture your happy place. Your happy place should be a place that either you've been to in real life or you want to go to. You saw a commercial for it, Tahiti, I don't know. Okay. But it's a place where it looks like it will calm you down. So what I would ask people to do right now, or the person who asked, is get that picture in your mind of where you would want to be. What's your calming place that you can go to by yourself in your head, whether your eyes are closed or open. Then I want you to go through the 5 senses. So if you said Tahiti, what do you see at the beach? What do you smell? What can you taste? What can you touch? Like, you go through all the 5 senses. Again, what's happening is your brain is no longer focusing on the anxiety provoking situation because now you're focused on something that's more pleasant. Wow. And when you think pleasant, how do you feel? Think what thought, emotion, response, you start to feel more pleasant, but it will take practice. Your body will only do what you tell it to do. And if you tell it to continue to hyperventilate, that's exactly what it's continue to do. Does that make sense to the person who asked the question?
Dr. TK, you helping us. Listen, y'all, I know Dr. TK for several reasons with her practice. She can't technically say this was a one-on-one therapy and all that stuff. But listen, you all, this is your first time actually speaking to a clinical psychologist or getting this type of information. And I know that it's been a tremendous blessing to you. Dr. TK, tell us, how can we reach you? Do you do private therapy sessions? Is it just for teenagers, young adults, or is it open to everybody?
Adults. So I think one thing that would be helpful, because we had to do it at Heavily Vision, especially during this season, there's been an influx of people wanting therapy, which is awesome. There's also been an influx of clients wanting Black therapists. We know that there's not a lot of Black therapists in comparison to others. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is not to prevent someone from going, but I really want you to be aware of a process. So if you have insurance, call your insurance provider and tell them to get you on the list. You want to see a therapist. You can be specific. If you want to see, and if you have insurance, you want to go through your insurance panel first and not just call a provider, because all of us are not paneled with all the panels. And that's what the general public thinks. They just think that we take all insurances, and we don't. We have to apply, and they have to accept us, and they have to be open. It's a lot of loopholes in mental health. Okay. So when you do find a therapist, whether it's myself. Right now, I don't have availability. I filled up due to COVID.
The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Now look, but I will tell you what I do. What I just did was called psychoeducational workshops. I don't mind doing these because remember how I said my mission, I can see multiple people at a time. I just need a topic and we can do this again. Like that's not a problem. It's more of the long term. I want to give somebody space to grow in mental health. And what I'm telling the people who are watching or listening is when you call, you should have at least 2 to 3 therapists that you want to see and call all of them. Do not just wait on one. I don't know how all therapists work. Some therapists just say on their voicemail they're full. Some therapists, unfortunately, don't even call people back. And then some therapists are available, but make sure that you have a couple of things in order. How are you paying for services? If it's insurance, do they take your insurance? And most importantly, what is your availability? Because you can find somebody you like all day long, but therapists don't work 40 hours because we just talked about vicarious trauma. It is dangerous for a therapist to see 40 clients in a week back to back. Yeah. Think about it. And so I did want to explain that because they're like, what you mean you all full? You know, and I'm like, I'm full.
Yeah, that's it.
So
that's all I can take.
Yeah, I can give you my email because I do coach therapists. Guess what I got? A whole directory. Yeah, so I got
somebody put what's the email so that they can put that in chat. What's the
email? So you can go to the word hello at drtk.com. So spell out drtk.com. And all I would ask of you, even though my email is HIPAA protected, I still like to protect your information. So just tell me like that you're connected to the church. And then, because if it's not me, my assistant, they'll reroute it to me quicker. And so just tell me
what hello at Dr. TK.
HELL, like hello at drtk.com. And tell me what kind of, like, who's being seen for therapy? What age are they? And what is the general problem? Not a paragraph, just what is the general problem? Grief and loss, trauma, PTSD, because therapists have specialties. And what I'll do is tap into my community first and see if they have availability before telling that person other avenues.
Okay.
But I'll link them. I got my whole community.
What is the waiting list, Dr. TK? Because some people's like, I'm not talking to nobody but Dr. TK. So do they gotta wait a year? Do they gotta wait until next year? How long?
So right now it's looking like the fall. Yeah, right now it's looking like the fall because most recently, I think like I'm on the advisory board for the Henson Foundation, and so they push out these campaigns. Oh, boom! I know they want to talk to me, but this is really big. When we push out that next campaign, I will make sure to notify you because people get 5 free sessions, especially if they don't have insurance, they don't have financial ability to pay for therapy. You can actually get free therapy, and 99.9% of all the therapists, men and women, are Black.
Wow.
And we had like 550 therapists in the first 2 campaigns.
Wow.
So I'm just letting you know I'm a resource guide. Yeah. So I want you to get the help. And if I'm not available, I will tell you where to go, but I don't want me not being available for you to stop your mental health journey.
For sure.
I'm not going to link you with somebody, at least in my community. I'll ask who's available, but I still go and choose. Yeah. So no.
Yeah. And Dr. TK, tell us, so we know that next month is Mental Health Awareness Month. Mm-hmm. Do you have any events planned or what's going on in the world of mental therapists?
Yeah. So a lot of therapists, or what I'm working with, the therapists that I work with on, is trying to get in front of as many people as possible to heighten the awareness, even though I think that this season has done a very good job of highlighting the benefits of therapy. But because of the times and more news is coming out, just really tapping into certain age populations or problems that need to be highlighted. Like how I mentioned multiple times, one of them is the issue with teenagers and suicide. Okay. And a lot of parents don't know how to have that conversation. And so like what I'm doing at the church, and if you want to talk, we can talk about this too. Sure. What I propose, because we did it for 3 years straight so far, is Bishop had I think a Google Voice number or something like that. So people can, the congregation, do an anonymous question. And then we did a disclaimer for me and another therapist there that said, we won't go too deep into someone's trauma because that requires an intake and we're on the stage. and we're not your therapist. But kind of like people were asking questions tonight, somebody would submit a question and then the panel would be able to answer. So last year we did it during the season and we did it on StreamYard for the church. And people were able to pre-submit questions. So we're actually going to do the same, at least for Heavenly Vision this year. Yeah. So, and I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, we're going to do that for Life of Faith too. We just got to check with Dr. TK and see what's her availability, and we'll let everybody know.
Yeah, just let me know.
But listen, you all, I've been extremely blessed tonight. Zena has a question. She has a nonprofit who serves team, and she said, "Is there a way that she could partner with you or your nonprofit?"
Yeah, just email
you.
Okay. Yeah, just email me and we can connect because I do work with teenagers. I do life skills, helping them get grown. You know, the stuff school doesn't teach them.
Listen, we know that that's valuable for sure. Listen, everybody, y'all know every Wednesday we do 20 for 20. We need 20 people to show a $20 gift tonight. You can use our Givelify, our Zelle, and you can use our Cash App. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. TK didn't ask me she didn't charge anything. She didn't send me a rider. Neither did she send a contract. She didn't send any of those things. But listen, we want to make sure that we bless her tonight. I want to be a blessing to her. And trust me, I just contacted her day before yesterday. The Lord dropped her in my spirit. And even more so, this was around the same time. And she just talked about triggers, y'all. And then here I'm going to pull in the trigger. But last year, my dad had asked me personally for Dr. TK's information because Bishop in March was preparing to have something like this. And we know what happened. And so I felt that even in this is a part of fulfilling Bishop's legacy. You know, this is a part of it. I
was deeply scheduled. I was ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go because I had lost her phone number. And I had to go through the text messages because I sent it to my dad last year in March. And so I'm like, there go Dr. TK. I got her. I remember. So we want all of you all to be a blessing to her tonight. And trust me, everything that we get tonight, I will give it to her. Trust me. She deserves it. We just want to show her that we love her. We appreciate you. And we honor you, Dr. TK, for sure.
I definitely appreciate it.
And then she's a daughter of my covenant brother, Bishop James Ray Taylor. And so we got to take care of her. It's crazy because when I had reached out to you, we talked on that Monday night. And I said, Bishop, I need you to contact Dr. TK because I need her. And he said, oh, no, that's easy. I'm going to call her right now. As soon as he was getting ready to call you, you had text me back. And was like, hey, and I was like, oh, Bishop, she must know your voice from afar, Doc. She knows Bishop. So we appreciate you for being here tonight. We got people all the way from Mississippi that's on here tonight.
Oh, wow.
The young lady that asked about the anxiety, she way in Mississippi. It's 11 o'clock at night, and you deposited something great into her life. And we appreciate you, Dr. TK. And hopefully we can continue to build on this platform. And
can I mention, you did say state, so just keep in mind that when you're finding a mental health provider, they have to be licensed in the state that you reside in. So if you do email me, let me know where you live, because I cover pretty much at least 30 states with those therapists, but they can only see you if they're licensed in that state. That's really important.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And so Life of Faith, it's our Under Pressure month. And tonight, we dealt with it tonight. Well, I wouldn't say we, but Dr. DK did. I just sat here and I took as many notes as you all did. And I'm telling you, I think I need to make sure that I continue to see my therapist and things of that nature to make sure Dr. TK, when she becomes available, if y'all can't get her, just know I took that spot. All right. Just know I took that spot, insurance or not, I'm going to take that spot. And so we appreciate you all. We love you all. We will see you all on Sunday. If you would love to worship with us in person, we'll be back in the sanctuary at 9 and 11. 11 o'clock is full. And I want to say that the 9 o'clock I think we have 3 spots available. It may be gone now, but try to register at www.lofnation.org. and we'll see you on Sunday. So I love you all. I thank God for you all, and I pray that you all were blessed. Just with this amount of information that you received tonight could literally change the trajectory of your life if you go back and just review the notes and begin to just apply it. I promise you, it's already changed my life that quick. I'm like, Lord, just the waking up in the morning and 3 deep breaths. I'm gonna be doing that every. I'm gonna be trying to get all the oxygen I can get, sis. I'll be trying to get it all. My three deep breaths. And so I love you all. You all have a blessed night. All right.
That was so cool.